Once you find yourself in conflict with a narcissist, it's a virtual guarantee they're going to start playing head games with you. That's why I put together a new course. It's very extensive called Anger Games. I'm going to teach you how to manage anger and conflict with a narcissist. There's a link below that's going to show you how to register, and I hope that you find it to be very insightful. I spent 40 years in the counseling office as a therapist, and obviously when people would come into my office, I heard a lot of stories about pain and frustration and bewilderment and tension. That's just part of what happens when you step into a therapist's office. And I considered it to be a privilege when I would help that individual try to sift through whatever it was that was bringing them into my office so that we could find some reason to have optimism. One of the things that I would do is I would hold on to bedrock truths, and those bedrock truths would guide me as I would talk through some of the strains that these individuals were dealing with. And one of those truths is simply, each person has inherent worth. Each person has an inborn dignity that's just simply yours. It's yours to claim. Now, so many complexities can come along in life that grab your attention and take your efforts into a very different kind of way that you forget those core truths. But what I want to do here today is I want to take you back to day one in your life and focus on two primary words that described you on that particular day. They're the words innocence and the word beloved. Now, when we talk about innocence, I want you to think there you were in that hospital room or wherever you were when you entered into this world, and you had a sense of purity about you. There obviously was a lack of guilt. You hadn't had a chance to do anything right or wrong. You were valued. You were considered precious. The innocence that was there on that first day was palpable, and everybody in the room understood. Here's someone that deserves to be cared for and tended to simply because you exist. And they felt happy that you were there. In addition, we can use that word beloved. You weren't just loved by whoever was there. You were treated as one who is beloved. And that kind of takes the concept of love a little bit further. You were much loved. You were cherished. You were treasured. You were favored. Your mere presence, your mere existence brought warm smiles from individuals. And the sentiment would be, I'm pleased that you're here in my presence. Thank you for showing up. Innocence and beloved status. That was yours on day one. Now, over time, I'm kind of guessing that you might have lost sight of those two words, your innocence and your beloved status. I mean, all sorts of difficulties can come along. You begin realizing there's a judgmental system out there, and you can say things or do things that'll get you out of favor. And so you try to figure out what you have to do to stay in favor. Anger shows up. You wind up being defensive. Control matters come along, and you're told that there's a mold that you have to stay inside of, and so on and so forth. That's what I mean when I say complexity comes along. And then when we go back to those words, innocence and beloved, they can almost feel like fairy tale words because it doesn't really match with what you experience. And yet it's interesting, throughout life, we have certain moments where we can go back and recoup some of that innocence and some of that beloved status. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. For example, let's suppose you have a teenager who's going through a graduation ceremony. And when you are watching that person receive their diploma, you're so proud of that individual. That beloved status is at an all-time high there. Or it may be at a wedding. Or it could be at a funeral. You hear the terms, dearly beloved, we're gathered here together. And you try to think of ways and reasons why you can maintain love. And it becomes a central ingredient. Sometimes the beloved status can be reminded when you hear of somebody who has some bad news. Perhaps they've had a cancer diagnosis, stage 4. Or it may be that they've been in a tragic accident and almost lost their life, a near-death experience. Or it may be that there's been a disaster and they need help and you're very willing to step in. I mean, those are times when you can go in and tap into the element of innocence and the beloved status. The key is for us to not so lose sight of that that all the complexities take over and bury that message. And I'd like to share with you a personal experience that I had about 12 or 13 years ago that was one of those seminal moments in my personal ongoing growth that reminded me how sometimes innocence and beloved status were missing in my own personal life. And here's the situation. I had a niece who had given birth to one of her sons. And my father, her grandfather, was there. And right after his great grandson was born, my father went to the hospital. And there were several members there in the hospital room. And his granddaughter said, "Granddaddy, would you like to hold your brand new great grandson?" And he looked at her, and his response was, "Not really." And you could have you heard all the gasp, the collective gasp of everyone in the room. Did he just say that? Not really. You see, my father was about 82 or 83 years old at the time, and he's since passed. And it was his way of saying, I'm in the presence of someone who represents total innocence, purity, the beloved status, and I don't know what to do with it. I never have learned. You see, going back into his history, he had a lot of pain and difficulty from the time that happened to the time of his death multiple years later. He and I had quite a few conversations about his history and who he was and how he developed the way he did and how it impacted our family. And by the way, he wasn't a bad guy. I mean, there were times when he could be very friendly and engaging and funny and all like that. So I'm not saying that he was an awful person, but he didn't know what to do. You see, his father had also had a lot of anger and strain and tension because my father's grandfather was a very mean person. And it was just kind of part of the Carter mindset. You know, be angry, have strong opinions, black and white thinking, do the right thing, and shut up and don't do anything that's going to get you in trouble. And so my father had a lot of insecurity and irritability and agitation, and the soft side of life was fleeting as far as he was concerned. That's the atmosphere that I grew up in. And I remember thinking, I don't like the binary thinking. I didn't call it that. I don't like the black and white thinking that's here in our home. You have to be this way, and there's a lot of rules and regulations, and there was a tension on the inside of me. It was very careful, important for me to maintain a carefully crafted image because I was a naturally friendly person, and I wanted to be included. And so I had a lot of strain and tension on the inside of myself. I got married too early. I was 22, wasn't ready. And over time, it didn't work. In my late 30s, I wound up being divorced. And because I was so image conscious, I was embarrassed, frankly, to be known as a failure. It was embarrassing for me to have to say, yeah, that happened to me, but there it was. You see, over time, in my 20s and 30s, I had been learning all sorts of other coping skills. And I wanted to tune into that. It was fascinating to me at learning all the concepts that went into the making of me helping other individuals. But particularly by the time I hit my early 40s and beyond, I had to realize, I've got to go back to my basics. And I'm going to make sure that when I approach other individuals and figure out how we can tap into their own internal innocence and beloved status, that I too am at a place where I understand where that is and what constitutes all of that. Now, what about you? Have you had certain experiences in your life where complexity has shown up, where there's strain and tension and confusion and off-base kinds of experiences that you had? Have you had individuals who would kind of let you know, significant individuals who would let you know, I don't know how to be in your presence and tap into your innocence. I don't know how to be in your presence and tap into your beloved status. You don't fit my ideal mold. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever had the message conveyed to you? I'm disappointed in you. You can do better. You should have done better. What's wrong with you? I'm doing my best to tell you how you're supposed to meet my standards, and you're not complying. What's wrong with you? And then have you ever experienced someone else's anger and harshness and meanness and or been betrayed by other individuals? That can be so devastating to you. Have you realized that person in front of you has a lot of pain, and they're displacing that pain onto you, and all the while they're telling you you're the reason that it's there, you're the fault, when in fact you're not? And then that individual can, or those individuals can give you the message that says, stop being you. And all along the way, that innocent and beloved person that you were on day one is squashed. It's covered over. Every one of us can have episodes, many episodes, that cause us to lose sight of that bedrock truth. But you know what? It's possible to go back and to recoup your sense of innocence and your sense of the beloved status. And here's how you do it. I want you to think of the times when you, as an adult now, have been in the presence of a newborn. Do you smile? Do you look at them and make funny sounds? And do you have a sense of warmth about you? And it's wonderful when you go into that space. When have you had moments where you're playful with animals? A pet, and you pet them and you laugh and you hug on them. Play with kittens or puppies. Have you had times when you've been with a little child and you've said, "Hey, way to go," and the child was so excited and you were excited because you were being a positive influence? Or maybe it's a 60-year-old person that you said, "Hey, way to go." Have you had a time with a friend where you gave that person a hug because you knew that they were having a bad day? Or have you been friendly and helpful to a perfect stranger and walked away thinking, wow, that was a really good experience? Or maybe you're excited when you have a gift to give to someone else. And the real thrill is you making them feel good because of your presence and your kindness towards them. That's when you're tapping into their sense of innocence and their beloved status. And it's coming from the place of you having that desire. And whenever you offer those kinds of reflections and initiatives to other individuals, the recipient of your goodness represents you. You see, you know what you feel like when you are reinforced as that person of innocence and the beloved status. And when you give it away, it's your way of saying, that's a real source. That's a real thing. I believe in it and I want to live into it. And so my response to you is when complexity does cover up and smother that, remind yourself on day one, your life was predicated upon innocence and a beloved status. Embrace it, claim it, make it your own, and pass it on. I hope that videos such as this can give you some good food for thought. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. I consider it an honor to talk with you about these kinds of things. I hope it helps you in your journey. If you haven't already subscribed, by the way, to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you have a need for therapy, and many times when you're trying to work this thing through, can be so good to have that therapist sit in front of you and say, I'd like to talk with you. I want to know you. I want to understand you. I've been sponsored for years by the people at BetterHelp.com, and there's a reason for that. And that is, I want to make sure that you are able to get the help that you deserve. And so as the need is there, there's a link below that you can click into, and there's a few questions to answer. Whole team of licensed professional therapists you can select from. Please get the assistance you need. Now, because I'm not doing my practice anymore, doesn't mean I don't have active elements here. One of the things I've done is I've taken my experiences and turned them into online courses. And you can do them at your own pace. Each course has at least 25 teaching videos. And then along with each video, we have handouts, documents, guided questions. My newest one is called Anger Games. It's about how not to get sucked into all the anger that the narcissist throws in front of you. We have Free to Be, This Is Me, Ready, Set, Connect. All of that is on my website, and you can look into that along with webinars that have been presented, and those are 90-minute presentations of a very different nature. We have my articles, access to my podcast, and then my books. So plenty of resources. On the day you were born, you had inherent worth. You had dignity, you were beloved, and you were an innocent person. I'm hoping that that's something you never forget. Hold on to it, cling to it, give it away, and when you give it away, you have more of it to give. That's how it works. And in the end, I'm hoping that you can be a person who understands this, and in doing so, it allows you to become a person of peace.